What comes to mind, what comes to our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. I've shared this quote with you before. It comes from A.W. Tozer. And I think it is so insanely and utterly profound. What does come into your mind when you think about God on any given day, in any given moment? Is there a story from the Bible that comes to mind as a default story about who God is? Is there a moment in your life that comes to mind when you think about who God is? Is there a verse? Is there a quote that captures who God is? Right? What comes into your mind when you think about God? I just want you to consider this for a second. The Bible is intended to shape our minds by starting with God. In the beginning, God created. And God said, and God saw, and God said, and God made, and God called, right? Over and over, God. Until everything in the heavens and on the earth are in place and are working as they were designed to work in such incredible and beautiful harmony. Until verse 31, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. The Bible will call back to this story again and again, right? That God made it all, and that it was not just good, but that when God was done with it, it was very good. God is the creator who makes very good stuff. Right? I mean, this should challenge the way that we make sense of the world and even the things that we do not like, right? Like when I boldly tell people that cats are the worst, that that they are evil and should be avoided at all costs, my dear sister in the Lord, Whitney, likes to remind me that God made cats and that I need to be careful that I don't reject one of God's good gifts. I don't know that I could say those words, and I want to believe her, but also they're cats. Well played, Whitney. As we explored last week, Genesis 1 and 2, right, give us this incredible picture of God, the good creator. And this should be our foundational, our default picture of God. But I don't know about you. I can read and I can reread these two chapters over and over again, and I have, and I can internalize the goodness of creation, and I can really believe that all human beings were made in God's image, and I can admire a sunset, and I can stand in awe of an incredible view. But if I'm really candid, it doesn't take me long to start asking, like, whatabouts? Like what about? Like, what about Jane's family? 36 years ago, a sweet little family Dad works hard, taking on multiple jobs to support the family. Mom takes care of the home. 5 kids are happy and they are healthy. And this family, including grandparents, aunts, and uncles, like the whole family just loves Jesus. But when Jane is 10 years old, her youngest brother, who was just 18 months at the time, gets sick and dies from unknown causes. Since Jane was 10 years old, she has known deep in her spirit that her brother's death was not very good. Last year, you guys will recognize this, a bunch of kids in Texas, they were just at summer camp, having the time of their lives, as kids do at summer camp, when a flash flood swept through the camp and tragically took the lives of 25 young girls and 2 counselors. Like, I don't know a single person who heard that story and thought, yeah, that makes sense. No, this is like the exact kind of event that makes us question whether God is really the good creator of Genesis 1 and 2, as it says he is, right? And we could go on, and I'm confident that any one of you could just immediately recall a story from the news in the last week or last month, and you could point to it and you could say, there's no way that this is very good. Right? Like, what about the murder I heard about? What about the act of child abuse? What about the war that is going on fill in the blank? Or what about that horrific act of terrorism? And even just locally, the other day, a bunch of masked men went into a jewelry store at the outlets and robbed it and then ran off. A local school administrator was found pursuing inappropriate relationships with students. And friends of mine, people I went to school with, dying from drug overdoses. And then there's just the stuff that will never make the news, right? Families ripped apart because of affairs and divorce. Young students bullied at school. Seniors in facilities where they've been forgotten and where they just carry the weight of loneliness every day. Layoffs, unemployment that create fear and anxiety for families, diseases and cancer, right? I've probably made my point. It is infinitely easier to look around and find all of the evidence that this world is not very good. In fact, it can then be hard to make the case that it is good at all. And so with this in mind, it would be so easy for us to just dismiss the Bible, to laugh at Genesis 1 and 2, right? It's so naive to the real world. It's blind to the real human suffering. But the Bible is not naive, and it is absolutely not blind. The first Bible readers, they knew the pain of loss. They were well acquainted with death, with violence, with war, with disease, with starvation. And as soon as we finish the first 2 chapters of Genesis, right, we actually find ourselves moving right into the world as we know it. In Genesis 3, we hear the story of Adam and Eve, a couple who are deceived. And they're tempted to doubt God's goodness. And maybe when we look around, we're tempted to doubt God's goodness. Adam and Eve, they then take for themselves what doesn't belong to them. Doubting that God is good. They don't trust that God will actually provide for them the things that they need, the things that are good. And in this moment, they break relationship with God. They break relationship with each other. They break relationship with the rest of creation. They begin to blame each other. They hide from each other and from God in shame. And the man It's kind of a final act in this story, actually begins to treat the woman like she's one of the animals. I mean, we should immediately just start to go, oh yeah, this isn't naive. This is the world that we live in. We begin to recognize this world. And then we move right into chapter 4, and Adam and Eve, they're fruitful, they begin to multiply, and they have 2 sons, Cain and Abel, and it becomes obvious that the break in relationship that happened between Adam and Eve in chapter 3, that break is now being passed down. It is generational. Because Cain is jealous of his brother Abel, and so he murders him. And there's nothing naive about this, right? We are well acquainted with a world where jealous siblings kill each other. And by the end of chapter 4, we've actually sped through multiple generations, and we are like long past Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, and we find one of the great-ish, maybe another great grandchildren of Adam and Eve, a man named Lamech, and he murders a man who did nothing more than hit him, wound him. But he claims that God will protect him from anyone who tries to get him back, and he says, well, because of what Cain did, he feels justified. And so you get this sense that violence is just escalating with every generation, so that by the time we get to chapter 7, the world is in rough shape, like really rough. And maybe it doesn't land fully because of how short the sentences are and how short the paragraph is, the description. But we hear, now the earth was destroyed in God's sight, which echoes, right? And God saw that it was good. But in 7 chapters, it has been twisted. Now God saw that the earth was corrupt. And the earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was destroyed. For all flesh had destroyed their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Like I said, there's nothing naive about the Bible. Like, the Bible is completely, absolutely honest about the human condition. God looks around and sees that something has gone very wrong with the earth that he made and he called very good. Sometimes our English translations like muddy the waters a bit here. And if you have your Bible, if you have it open, it might help to like see some of this. But if you look at most English translations, you'll notice that God sees that the earth is, and most English translations say something like corrupted or maybe even ruined. And the word gets repeated 3 times. The earth was corrupted in God's sight. God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupted. All flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. 3 times, 2 sentences, 2 verses. And it actually gets repeated one more time, but our English translations obscure it for some reason. In verse 13, we read, God says, behold, I will blank them with the earth. Fill in the Hebrew word that is there. That blank is actually the exact same word as the word that gets translated as corrupt. But here, almost every single translator translates this word, the 4th appearance of this word, as destroy. God will destroy the earth. John Goldengay, an Old Testament scholar, is like one of the few translators who uses the same English word in all 4 places, and I think it's powerful. Here's why it matters. Some have been tempted to read these short statements about humans corrupting the earth. And then we think, corruption, it doesn't sound that bad. Because like in our world, corruption means like maybe you took a bribe, or maybe like you corrupted a person by making them cuss. I remember my group of friends would sometimes like take pride in the person who never cussed. When we were in high school, we're like, we're corrupting them, right? And so you get them to cuss. You're like, is that really a big deal? We don't think about corruption as like a fundamental destruction of something. And so when we come to the end of verse 13 and God declares he's going to destroy humans and the earth, we're like, whoa, buddy, overreaction much? Because like corruption to us just isn't that bad. But God needs us to see that we're not talking about mere corruption. Human violence has destroyed the very good earth that God has made. And as biblical stories do, when they really need you to get something, they just repeat that 3 times usually. 3 times is a really good indication that you should be paying attention. And 3 times we're told that human violence has destroyed the earth. God sees the destruction. He names it as destruction. And so when God says that he will destroy the earth, what he's saying is he's finishing what the humans have started. He is giving them over to the desires of their hearts. This is what they have wanted all along, and he is giving them over to it. And God isn't just reacting with anger. God is decisively giving people the thing that they have spent generations pursuing. The word anger never appears in this story. And yet it's shocking how many people think the flood story is a story about an angry God. The flood is not the story of an angry God. The flood is the story of a very good creator, devastated by the destruction caused by his prized possession, the pinnacle of creation, humans made in his image. Genesis tells us this exactly. In verse 5, it says, Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man, of humanity, was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continuously. And Yahweh regretted that he had made humanity on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. Every intention of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil continuously. That's a statement. Every intention of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil continuously. And we're told that God's heart is grieved. That God's heart is grieved, and that he has a change of mind because of what humans have done, because of what humans have become. We started with a quote from A.W. Tozer: what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. But I want to add a second most important thing. What comes into our minds when we think about ourselves, when we think about humans, is almost as important. Because the stories we read this week, and that we heard again this morning, and that we will actually read again this week, name for us a shocking, brutal reality that people can be a literal nightmare in God's creation. Created by God, like very good, tasked with continuing his good creation, made to be his representatives, that we can individually and collectively just make a mess of things. And as the story goes, it is not just some humans. These stories keep us from saying, yeah, those people are terrible. No, these stories tell us that it is all of us. All of us. From the beginning of humanity, we have, by choice, by nature, rebelled against our good Creator God. That we have taken what isn't ours, that we have hurt our loved ones and our neighbors, we have hurt God's creation, and we might be tempted to think, well, maybe God should just start over with the best of us. Except, we already heard this morning, right? When God does that, when God rescues only Noah and his family, the very first thing they do after being saved is hurt one another again. And by chapter 11, the arrogance, the pride of humanity has once again spread and infected everyone. It has quickly made its way to every people group, and people are coming together against God. Once again, as humans, as they build the Tower of Babel, they are grasping for what doesn't belong to them. And they try to make a name for themselves. And I love how Pastor David said it this morning. They are busy trying to make a name for themselves when they have already been given a name. They have already been given God's name to define them and shape them and guide them. But by chapter 11, they're already on their path, on their way to destroying the earth again. I don't know if you feel this, experience this, think this, but there is a deep human temptation, and it plays itself out among people again and again, to believe that humans, that people, that us, that we are fundamentally good. There are whole teaching strategies in schools. There are governmental systems. There are parenting philosophies built around the idea that kids are good, that people are good. We just make bad choices sometimes, right? We sometimes just do the wrong thing. This isn't the story that the Bible tells. Yes, absolutely. 100%. We were made very good. We were wonderfully and fearfully made by God. God loves what He has made, but that doesn't mean that we are still fundamentally good. Through stories, the Bible tells us that every single human heart is by nature bent away from God. And that this bend is a core problem for us. And it's a problem that we can't fix on our own. We can't fix this problem for our kids with good parenting. We can't fix this problem as a society with the proper right form of government, with the perfectly elected officials. We can't change people with the best, most perfect laws. We can't give the best incentives and change people. The Bible tells us that we, every human being that has ever lived is desperately in need of a new heart. We need to be given a new heart that is capable of responding to God. A heart that can only be given by God. And we need God to make that heart new every morning. Just because we get that new heart once doesn't mean we're like on the path, but every day, continually, we need God to be renewing us in his way and in relationship with him and with each other. The stories in Genesis 3 through 11, they give us a picture of a God who grieves over the state of our hearts, who grieves over what our hearts have done in the world. And if we look around and we see all of these signs that the world is not very good, if our response is to somehow blame God for that rather than humanity, we already have evidence that maybe our hearts are bent the wrong way. God grieves over the state of our hearts and what we do to ourselves and to each other, to our world, when our hearts are wicked. But God does not sit back and let us destroy his creation forever. God shows up. God has come to set us free. God has come to die at the hands of violent humans. I mean, fundamentally, the violent humanity that we see in Genesis 6 and 7, that's who we see. That's who we see putting Jesus on the cross. And that's not just some humans, it's all humans. Our God has come to pay the cost of our rebellion. Our God has come to help us see and to want the new heart that he offers us. And it's available to us today. And as we sang earlier, oh, come to the altar. And so we will come this morning to the altar, to the table where the life of Jesus has been offered for us.